Welcome to the Cellar. The lighting's a little wonky. I'm still figuring it out. Kind of an old light fixture that takes those long, narrow, round bulbs, tubular bulbs. And so I finally went into the 21st century and got an LED. Good God, am I glad I got the equivalent to 40, because it's like a 60 regular. I'm still getting used to all this light down here. So anyway, off we go. We'll start. I have good memories of Top Secret. Granted, I only played it by the rules exactly once. Later on, there was a guy in our gaming group that was way into it and ran a game for a while, but it was an amalgam of Top Secret and the James Bond 007 game. Being just a player, we let him do all the heavy lifting with knowing what he wanted to do with the rules. We just told him what we wanted to do, and he worked it out. Good memories, really fun memories. Yeah, isn't that the ideal? I think every role-playing game ends up being a little homebrewed. In this case, you had somebody that was into the genre, wanted to run it. You're in tall cotton, baby. That's as good as it gets. Everybody was having fun. That's all that matters. On the topic of abusing potions, I was inspired by the potion miscability table in the DMG to implement a simplified version of potion mishaps when a character drinks multiple different potions in short succession where the different liquids might mix in their stomach. Players knowing the risk nearly always dissuades them from trying to down multiple potions, and I have yet to have a PC die from this mechanic, but maybe one day. Okay, I don't have a problem. There's a potion that I encourage to be abused in my campaign, and that's the cures. Cure light, cure heavy. Big Red Bull, small Red Bull. It fits in within the ethic and the mechanism of my world, hit points being what they are. I certainly would not encourage downing a potion of giant strength and then something else. No, I certainly wouldn't encourage that. I wouldn't encourage using anything other than cures in that fashion, mixing them without having some disastrous results, at least as a possibility. But again, in my world, my ethic, my mechanism, that's what light cures are. Cure heavy, cure light. You know, big one, little one. A lot of caffeine, little caffeine. What level of detail do you advise for castles and strongholds? OD&D, BX, and AD&D all seem to have pretty in-depth rules regarding construction and cost for players' strongholds, even going into prices and sizes of each individual component. But I've not been able to find much information about how they actually run and what purpose having players carefully map out these details would serve. Would be great to get your insight on how this was handled back in the day. All right. It was somewhat abstracted, but we had a basic chart. We hired men-at-arms, and we acquired, followers, if you will. They had to be paid, right? They had to eat. You had to feed them. That was all just kind of, sort of guesstimated. But it was serious enough that the person who owned this establishment or this edifice had to have an income stream. He had to keep paying for it. Those 20 men-at-arms and those 10 like cavalry or whatever. My background in this is admittedly OD&D as the basis of, and that was based on chainmail. it's easy enough that you could say, okay, if chainmail says you hire 20 of these, you can figure out costs, you can figure out payroll, you can figure out how many, if you want. I mean, it depends on the depth you want to take this. You can make this all, if you're into this, you individually are into this, you can have a great time figuring out how this all operates in efficiencies. And run it by your DM and say, okay, this is going to be my cost. This is what it's going to run to keep, run this thing. Support my followers, etc. for a month, every month, whatever. You can go as deep into it as you want, or you can abstract it as the DM and say, okay, you're going to have an income of to break even. And that's all. And I can't give you a gold number because that's all dependent upon how your campaigns run. Mine were gold light. They still are gold light. Gold should be valuable and uncommon. I wrote an adventure once where they found the collections of a long buried temple. And they found the enormous collection of coppers. I don't know, 20, 30,000 of them had been accumulated in the depths of this temple. And they also found a bunch of silver. But they didn't find much gold. And depending upon your currency and your exchange rates and your prices and all that, that's all stuff you can finagle. Gems and conversion to money. Well, are you going to have some little podunk village have a gem master, a master jeweler? Okay, you can think out how to convert stuff like that. And all this goes into the upkeep to whatever degree you really want to go to. It's not dungeons and it's whatever you want it to be. If you want to if you have a campaign where you have 2 or 3 or 4 of the player characters capable of doing this based on their levels and their wherewithal, and they're capable to do this, fine. At this point, this is when we retired these characters that built it, took one of their people and adventured with that character because that character's wealth was going in part back to so and so. There's lots of ways you can support this economically, but as a DM, I would expect the castle or stronghold owner to come to me with the plans already laid out. This is what I'm doing. This is what I expect it to cost me, etc., etc. And then you can dicker with them about, well, no, I think you're a little light here. Oh, well, you might not have, figure out a cost that's reasonable, that is a drain, requiring replenishment of the coffers to whatever detail you want. Frank Menser wrote a multi-part adventure when we were together at Eldritch, and he had everything down to the changing of the guard, how many were in the guard, whatever, because it was the point of the adventure to defeat, dupe, get around, whatever, all this. And it was it was extremely detailed. Type A detailed, which was more than I care to go into. But hey, if that's your bag. Let's see. Oh, I copied that one twice. Oops. I never used a hit location system for D&D, but did for other games. In the Sword and Sorcery vein, my main alternate games from back in the day were Dragon Quest II Edition and Stormbringer, both of which do include major or grievous wound stable that can result in lost or permanently impaired limbs, etc. I never thought of the character being unusable after such a loss. Okay. When such things have happened, I've found that often becomes the focus of future adventures. For example, they go out looking for a cleric, scroll, etc. that can cast a restoration spell on the character. Along the way, I'm likely to offer them some seemingly easier solutions, such as disembodied hand with a demon bound to it that is looking for an extra arm in which to graft itself. Of course, that probably won't work out well for a good character party. It does seem like most tabletop RPG designers don't want to use forms. Okay. It seems to me that what you're using as what you call forms, I would refer to more as potential side adventures or seeds for another adventure, so that, oh God, okay, they went there, okay, now it's time to flesh out this seed. Or, I think that's what you're trying to talk, I guess that's what you mean. He's trying to give away his newest monster design worksheet that we can use as a monster flashcard, along with an instructional video how to use the form, but okay, very few takers. You find them to be powerful tools. I can write dozens of skeletal adventures. That's a good term for it. Skeletal adventures, the basic outlines. And with full inventories of total XP, GP, magic, etc. will be included. Just put that on a page or two and then flesh them out later to be exactly what I need, where I need it. Okay, you're putting auxiliary clauses set aside for the paragraph that you're going to use to create the story. I can understand that. That's your methodology. That's not the way I do it. It's not to say yours is wrong. It's not to say mine is right. It's just not the way I do it. I got to look at this note, see if it's something important. Nope, not important for this. I put in the notes for this. Nope, okay. See, on Sunday, I'm going to be running the game for the guys in Okinawa, the players. I don't know who will show. For the 6th time. The Wheel of Blame. Check it out. Okay, back to the forms. I don't know what to tell you. You're either not promoting them right, you're not selling them right, or you're not explaining how to use them right to appeal to other people. I'm not, right doesn't mean right as opposed to wrong. It just means not enough or not, whatever. If it works for you, great. I thought I remember, and this is in response to this, I thought I remembered TSR having published some public-facing design forums along those lines at one point. After some poking around, I realized I was thinking of the Dungeon Master's Design Kit from 1988. Harold Johnson and Aaron Alston got the writing credit for them. I wasn't doing business with TSR at the time, so I never worked with these forms. Okay, maybe you ought to go online, previous person, and see what they did and see if you can do it better. Or if theirs is better, whatever. Good ideas come from many places. Okay, here we go. We talked last time about rationalizing failure. Well, I didn't see. So this individual says, one note on rationalizing. I think a lot of the drive to do this comes from the mechanics of 5e and the over-reliance in that game on ability checks, where the difference between someone with an average ability score and the human maximum is all a +4 on the D20. Those mechanics in particular seem to often undervalue the range of competency, especially when you say, let every character try to break the stuck door down. For example, if the muscle-bound fighter with 18 strength rolls poorly, they might be shown up by the scrawny wizard with 8 who just got lucky. And it too often beggars belief. In a case like this, implementing a rationalization where it isn't PC failure so much as a really tough door actually makes it harder on the party, since if the fighter couldn't break down the door, weaker characters have no shot. Okay, I've had instances where we're going down the ability score level of doing something, and somebody goes, the wizard's smart, he's clever. So when he hits the door, he doesn't rush up with his shoulder, he whacks it right by the lock. And his die roll works. I see what you're saying about where rationalization is coming from. I still don't think, somebody else addresses this a little later. Okay, and this is in response. It's an interesting problem in terms of systems theories and the butterfly effect of one solution raising new problems. And I agree with you, rationalizing failure is an outcome of skills-based RPGs. It's not necessary in old school or rules-like games. In the case of the door being broken down or a lock being picked, one solution that has been raised on this channel before is that failed roll can become an indication of how long it takes to perform the task by the best qualified member of the party, rather than an outright failure. Then the question is, how long does the party want to spend on the problem, and how many wandering monsters do they have to contend with in the meantime? Good points. Let's talk about wandering monsters for a minute. I'm okay with using the occasional wandering monster in the very first time that a group goes to explore an area, dungeon delve. And as they run into wanderers, they're dead. And if they don't finish the adventure, they leave and they go somewhere else. Well, I don't restock it with the same number of wandering monsters. Especially if they're coming back in a couple of days. It takes a while for other things to move in. That's just the way I look at it, the way I run it in my world. I don't particularly care for wandering monsters just being a wandering monster if it doesn't have some hint of a purpose in line with the story or the structure of where it is or where it's wandering. I do I do see a purpose to wandering monsters if you got a party that stops and squabbles at every intersection. And I didn't come up with this. Gary did it masterfully. Everybody's blah, 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 and he'd start rolling dice, and everybody would immediately make a decision because sometimes there was something coming from the dice, and sometimes he was reminding us that something good. So, in Wandering Monsters, okay, you've heard about the ruins of such and such have been discovered. And so you go, and it's a very, and you only heard about it from somewhere that wasn't in it, but they know it's there or something, it's virgin ground for exploring and adventuring. There would be wanderers that are looking for a home. Every room obviously doesn't have something in it, every opening. But you can logically put things in there, and you can logically have things wandering. However, I don't like to have big things wandering. I don't have an ogre wandering, but I might have a pack of wolves. just has to satisfy my inner logic. Okay. On the topic, we're failed roles. Establishing PC knowledge. In some RPGs, players are encouraged to roll for knowledge. That is, can PC recognize, not necessarily read, the language and mysterious runes on the wall, what they're written in, or know the color of a potion of giant strength from a potion of priapism. Okay. I'm going to continue to read this and then comment. In other RPGs, powered by the apocalypse, for example, GMs are encouraged to let the players invent the reason PC knows something, usually with an emphasis on inter-character relationships, and with the caveat that GMs may rule such knowledge as incomplete or false, thereby impacting the relationships, etc., etc., etc. I believe that you favor a common-sense approach, as in the case of the PC asking the DM which side of the wooden lever shows more wear, in order to attain the most likely direction to move it in. Yes, and a good player will tell the DM he's looking at the door and I'm looking for the wear marks. And I've only had a handful of players do that over all the years. And I'm absolutely bone honest with them. Yes, there is wear. It appears to go up and down a lot, not down and up, or whatever. Yes, certainly, and I truly love it when somebody gets so common sense on me. I love it. I don't have that's not metagaming. That's not metagaming at all. That's great character play. Excuse me. That's great character play. How do you handle, going on, this individual, how do you handle PC knowledge where that type of common sense element is not available, as in the runes on the wall as above? In examples you've given from your games of Carbondale, you may have awarded PCs who have obtained a string of successful rolls on a certain task with a note on their character sheet to show they have a knack. PC knowledge that I don't have a problem if they can rank. I don't have a problem with somebody with a high intelligence or a high wisdom claiming to understand that, no, I can't read it, but I know that that's ancient Low Dwarvish. Because I saw something once and was told that that's what ancient Low Dwarvish looks like. I don't have a problem with that. Great. I don't have to figure out a way to introduce ancient Low Dwarvish. Okay? And if they do a really extraordinary intelligence roll, they know that's exactly what it is, and they may recognize one or two runes. Doesn't give them proficiency in it; they just know what it is. Then you can, however you wish, go on in your campaign on how they gain proficiency in it, or they take it to somebody, copy it down, and take it to somebody in town, or in the city, or this weird eccentric wizard they heard about, take it to him to have him translate it for them. And now you got a little side adventure going, and the wizard can give you a little task. Sure, I'll do it for you. You got to take care of that something or other that's ruining my apple orchards. Okay, a bunch of little potential side quests just happen, little one-offs. One-off only in the sense that let's go do this thing. They still count in the overall scope of the campaign. Um, let's see, go on here. Does the same toss of a fair coin method apply to more esoteric knowledge in your opinion? Is it more case by case, depending upon how the DM feels or how the plot dictates the outcome? Well, if you're going to throw a little bunch of esoteric clues in there, if you're going to window dress, then you got to be prepared to follow it through. If you're going to cover the wall with strange exotic symbols, then you got to have, in your mind as DM, you got to know what it is. You got to know what it says. Even if it's gibberish, you have to know. And I don't have a... Again, I'm old school and I rely on the intelligence and wisdom capabilities of the player characters. And if they've got good ones, then they've got a good chance of figuring out what it was. Does it mean they could read it? Again, we're going back to the runes here. But they know what it is based on their intelligence, and it's a die roll. And I don't need a rationalization. If they don't, well, no, guess you don't know. Looks familiar, though, and you go on. Let's go on to a different topic. Hit location seems to me to run completely counter to the abstract hit point-based combat of D&D. If you can't use your hit points to avoid a blow that might as well be fatal, what's even the point? That being said, I could see it being used as a slightly less severe alternative to death at 0 hit points, where once you're out of hit points, blows start lopping off limbs, crushing bones, etc., many of which would be fatal or permanently disabling. Now, in response to that, someone else wrote, are you suggesting that 0 hit points could amount to incapacitation, as in a leg checked off, with the possibility of bleeding out, but less than 0 hit points, indicating death? That might give the incapacitated player more game time, as they describe applying a tourniquet, to walk away from the close shave, albeit with a distinctly different gait. And in response to that, the original post-it, you could do it like that. What I envisioned was that hit points could go into the negatives without a definite death point, but every one that drops to 1 to 0 or less, or while at 0 or less, has a hit location-based maiming effect, most of which are incapacitating or severely disabling, and some of which include immediate death, which becomes more likely the lower the hit point goes. Okay, that's the way you want it. Run it. I still 0 hit points. You didn't avoid the fatal blow. Word being fatal. That's the word that's always been in my lexicon, in my way that I think about it, what I write it, how I play it. You didn't avoid the fatal blow. You said that you play some board games online. Have you tried Board Game Arena? No. Do you play board games using the Vassal engine? No. Tried to once, a couple, 3, 4 years ago. It was pretty crude, and I lost interest. Curious how you play online. Generally, I don't play a lot of games online. I do play Scythe. I do play any of the Tickets to Rides that are there, and this is with my group of buddies, my gaming friends. Those are the two we mostly play online, mainly because we can get together at an odd time. They play out quickly, so if nobody could get off before 9, we don't have to meet somewhere. We can go home, sit down, and play. I really enjoy playing the Ticket to Ride online, especially with the guys I play with, because we all play very aggressively. And so it makes it fun. That's what I play online. All right. Okay, now here's a comment on the new top secret New World Order. It's a dice pool game and mind-numbingly complicated. By dice pool, I mean if you're trying to do a thing, you'd use one die, D4, D6, D8, or D10, depending upon your skill or attribute level. Another die for the ice object you are using. Seems like a third die for something I forget. The number you needed to roll to hit or succeed was static. I guess it's intuitive to Savage Worlds players in the UK, but it'll likely never leave my shelf, unfortunately. Well, I don't play New World Order. I couldn't tell you. I can't even really comment on your things. I do know it uses lots of dice. I do know that lots of dice are not always looked at with welcoming eyes by some players. I like lots of dice because of the probabilities and the different numbers that can be generated with each. For instance, I think it's much, I would, if I were looking for giving a monster damage that it would do, it's a lot more fun to use the average that each die produces. For instance, a 4-sider is 2.5. Well, if I decide to use 6 4-siders, that's 15 points on average each roll. It's a lot more fun than other dice that have a lesser or different average working for them. When designing, that's what I look at, is probabilities and likelihoods, and then try to convert them to a die roll. Some people like lots of dice, some people don't. Granted, when you're getting the hang of something, I mean, if somebody has, compared to how I started playing when everything was D6, to someone that started playing a year later using the Greyhawk expansion with all those funny dice nobody'd seen before, because I had one set of those funny dice that I took back to Carbondale. One guy had seen them in a math class 3 years earlier when he wasn't in college. He remembered he had a math teacher that had those. And that's where we had originally found them, was at an educational supply. Another comment on the rationalization. You failed. Rub some dirt on it and keep moving. It's the military side of you. Oh, hi, this is my cat, Luca. Hello, Luca. Look up there and tell the people hello. He's purring right now. He only wants to be friendly and personable when it's inconvenient for me. So we're just going to ignore him. Where was I? Completely derailed my train of thought. Okay. He talks about, making house rules to get around that, and some groups making house rules. And now he attributes it to young players where no character can ever die. Oh, you gonna get down? Okay, goodbye. Ouch, that hurt. And there's a reply to that says it's nothing to do with youngins, all to do with the group flavor. People have played in these ways since the beginning always are equally valid, as there is no objective measure for having fun. Nope, there isn't. You can say after something, yeah, it was a little fun. You can say after something, oh yeah, man, it was fun. But that's subjective. There's no objective way. Can't give it 3 funs on a scale of 5. All right. Somebody commented on my shirt. I saw, I left a crater. Well, then we're going to. I'm trying to talk Jim into doing the intelligent version that says Vedi Vici Relicto Craterus. which is Latin for the same thing. You can find the shirts at Mud Puppy. All right, now I have something I want to speak about. Some of you may have seen a really moronic post that was put in the day after the last one came up that I then removed because it was old accusations and whatever, that part. But then the other part puzzled me. Let's think about Camelot. What was Camelot? Was Camelot a castle on a hill somewhere? Was Camelot the ideal? Well, certainly in the most common concept of Camelot, Arthur and the knights and the round table and all that. Okay. That was Camelot, right? Then later in the 60s, Camelot became a period during the early 60s when we were being very prosperous and getting ready to go to the moon. And anyway, so Arthur dies and these bodies whisked away to Avalon. Excalibur gets chunked into the ocean, and the various members of the Round Table go off and do various things, and quests and what have you, and fade away. So then, many years later, some sleazy skeezy shows up with a rusty sword and says, "Here, I have it. I have Excalibur. Where I am is Camelot." Well, I think that Camelot wasn't a hill, wasn't a house on a hill. It was the people. It was asked, again in this really annoying, why I hadn't answered the call of the company that bore me, etc., etc., etc. Well, there ain't no more TSR. I don't give a damn who buys what and declares themselves to be TSR. No. Not happening. TSR really seemed, the Camelot at TSR ceased to exist for once and for all when she who shall not be named took over. The myth was dead. Only the name lingered on. Some sleazy skeezy snapping up a copyright, a trademark rather, that had been allowed to lapse, declaring themselves to be something does not make them so. Not happening. So what's happening? There will not be an episode next week. I am going back to the Quad Cities for my 8th grade, 60th 8th grade class reunion from the Catholic school that I went to. So I'm looking forward to it. One of the main things I'm looking forward to is getting to see Mike Gingler again. Mike is the guy that introduced me to D-Day, Avalon Hill, which started my whole fascination with gaming. So I can't wait to see him. I haven't seen him in probably 65 years. I don't know. And after that, I have to get a bunch of medical procedures done. All annual stuff. Had my physical today. Get to go have the colonoscopy. And I got some more things to get off the top of my head. And other than that, I seem to be in okay condition. So I'll talk to you again in 2 weeks. In the meantime, have fun. play games. Dodatagovi. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
The curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon